As the jury deliberates the 34 counts against former President Trump, the political stakes could not be higher. The outcome will have a massive impact on both Trump and Biden's campaigns. Let's bring in Kayleigh McEnany, Outnumbered co-host and former White House press secretary. Kayleigh, some folks I've been talking to say if the former president is convicted, which earlier, as he was on his way to the lunch break, as we were talking with Mercedes Colwin, he seemed to indicate could be a real possibility. But that if he is convicted, his approval rating will go up 10 points. What do you think?
We'll see. I don't think anyone on his team wants to see a conviction, not just for personal reasons, but because that is a huge unknown. I mean, it's never happened in history for a presidential candidate, so it's a huge unknown politically. So I don't think anyone is rooting for that per se on his team, I would guess. But nevertheless, one thing I would note about the polls, because I have seen the polls that show, a certain percentage could shift here or there depending on a conviction, and I question those. And the reason I say this, John, is because I've heard the argument over and over again. Well, if he's indicted, the bottom falls out. Well, if there's a mugshot, the bottom falls out. If this goes to trial and we see all these charges against President Trump that are salacious, the bottom falls out. But the bottom hasn't fallen out. And Politico noted this number yesterday, that at the beginning of the trial on April 22nd, there was a 0.3% lead for Trump in 538. Today, that's 1.4%. So this hasn't hurt him. A lot of this is baked in. Yes, a conviction would be novel. Yes, who knows what would happen in the event of a conviction. But I wonder how much of this, a storyline from back in 2016, how much of this is already baked in.
All right, Kayleigh, you and I had a chance to catch up yesterday on Outnumbered. It was great to join the ladies on the couch. And we were talking about this change. What changed with the White House to where now the president says he's going to speak from the White House at the conclusion of this trial once a verdict is reached? Karine Jean-Pierre was asked about this just a short time ago. We turned the sound. Listen to what she had to say when asked about this trial.
I have to be pretty honest with you. I've not talked to the president about that. This is going to be an important day. Obviously, the campaign is going to have more to share. The president, and I said this yesterday a couple times when I was asked this question in various ways, that the president's focused on the American people, delivering for the American people. You'll hear him talk about some of that today. Again, the campaign will speak to that since a campaign event. That's his focus.
Wondering your reaction as a former White House press secretary about what she just said and her confirmation that the president will indeed weigh in on the outcome of this.
Well, I think it was smart for her to punt much of that to the campaign because it is, after all, the campaign that showed up yesterday. So that was a good move there. But I'm very curious about this decision to speak after the verdict. I'm very curious about what we saw yesterday. And I think Politico, who wrote the inside story of how that event came about, they noted it was born out of frustration by White House or campaign officials, I should say, that were frustrated that Trump is getting a lot of the oxygen. He's driving the narrative every single day. And I think they're desperate for attention. And they talked about in the article a need to be nimble and creative. I think a lot of this has to do with him driving the narrative. And secondly, how successful the Bronx rally was. President Trump chose to go speak at the Libertarian Convention over the weekend. And yeah, there were some boos here and there, but it was a creative move, an audacious move. So their effort to be creative and nimble, I think, was best embodied with their debate salvo of, hey, take us up on these terms. And they set the terms of the debate. That was a case of the Biden campaign being nimble. Yesterday, I'm not quite sure fit the bill.
Yeah, I was going to say, what happened yesterday with De Niro, is that the right attention that the campaign wanted to get? Could that be described as nimble and creative?
I don't think so. I mean, there was even a quip from the communications director before De Niro about, is President Trump napping right now? I mean, they really kind of leaned into this case. And I think it's kind of a fool's errand, John, when Trump is making the case, these are the Biden trials. In the event of a guilty verdict, be certain he's going to continue to make that case. So you lean into what your opponent is describing as the Biden trials. If I were in the Biden White House or campaign, I wouldn't be touching this with a 10-foot pole. And I think it speaks to the level of desperation they're feeling right now, the level of inter-party pressure they're feeling at the moment.
Really interesting. Jerry Baker said something similar as he sat down here from the Wall Street Journal that, this may be working against Democrats. The longer that he's sitting in there and not out there, this is working for him, Kayleigh.
Yeah, and look, make no mistake, this is a huge moment, not just in this campaign. It's a huge moment in American history. We've never seen this before. No one really knows where this will go. But I have to wonder, as much of oxygen as this is getting now, and deservedly so, 5 months from now, Sandra, what is the conversation going to be? The American people are going to be going out to vote November 5th, 2024, thinking about Thanksgiving dinner, if they can afford that grocery bill, their kids going back to college, many of whom get out of college and can't afford homes, the Christmas list that their kids are putting together. And I wonder if a Stormy Daniels payment, even if a guilty verdict were to come out of this, is going to be top of mind 5 months from now amid all the other troubles we face.
All right, Kayleigh, it's great to see you. We will see you again tomorrow on Outnumbered.
Thank you, Kayleigh.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Thanks, Sandra.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kayleigh McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.